Today we're going to be talking about an edible weed that you probably have growing outside in your lawn and you've probably removed from your lawn at some point. Meet hairy cat's ear, the underappreciated lawn queen. A lot of people spray or dig this out of their yards because they think it's a weed, but you might reconsider that after watching this video. This plant looks a lot like dandelion, but it is actually way tastier. Hairy cat's ear is in the same family as dandelion, and it's commonly mistaken for dandelion because the leaf shape's kind of similar and its flowers look pretty similar as well. They even share a lot of the same habitats, but hairy cat's ear actually does even better in lawns because it grows so flat to the ground. In fact, another common name for hairy cat's ear is flatweed. The main thing that distinguishes hairy cat's ear from dandelion is actually just the hairs on the leaves, which is where this plant gets its name. It kind of looks like a cat's ear because cat's ears have hair and hairy cat's ear has hair. Dandelion, on the other hand, has no hairs on the leaves, and that's true of a lot of other dandelion lookalikes as well, like salsify, smooth hawksbeard, which yes, that is another strange name, but smooth is in the name, and also chicory and prickly lettuce. Now, chicory does have some fine hairs on the leaf stem, and prickly lettuce actually has spines on the stem. So if it has spines on the stem, it is not hairy cat's ear. So when you're looking for hairy cat's ear, you're looking for this type of hair distribution on the leaf, and it's gonna feel ever so slightly rough when you feel it with your fingers. Once hairy cat's ear and dandelion flower, it is actually super easy to tell the difference because dandelion has just one stem and one flower, whereas hairy cat's ear has a branched flower stem with a lot of different flowers per stem. Hairy cat's ear flowers are also a lot smaller than dandelion flowers and they have a lot less petals. We're gonna harvest hairy cat's ear in the springtime. In my area, it's usually around March to May, and we wanna catch the plant before it sends a flower stalk up the middle, and definitely before it flowers. Basically, you can harvest it after that. Sometimes the leaves get a little leathery and fibrous, and this is true of a lot of wild greens. But if you just boil them more, honestly, you could still harvest it then as well. And we're gonna be harvesting either the whole plant, and we can stick a knife under the plant and sever the taproot and then pull up the entire rosette-shaped plant, or we can harvest it leaf by leaf. I find myself usually just plucking a leaf off one by one, and that way I get to choose the leaves that are the most tender and the least mangled by lawnmowers and bugs and such. You can actually also harvest hairy cat's ear in the fall. A lot of wild edibles will have kind of like a second leaf production era after the weather starts to turn back to being a little bit wetter and colder. You can also harvest the emerging flower stalks, kind of like asparagus. You want to catch them when they're really young. I usually don't harvest them when they're more than this tall, and you would want to cut off maybe the top like 2 or 3 inches, whatever's the most tender. These can get a little bit bitter sometimes, so definitely taste test it before you harvest a bunch to see if it's still good. These stalks usually come up in May or June in my area. I live in Washington State. If you live like further north or further south, it might be earlier or later, depending. Because hairy cat's ear grows in lawns, we want to make sure that we're not harvesting from somewhere where dogs are peeing and pooping, okay? So if you have pets and you have a lawn where they do their business every day, you might not want to harvest from that patch of lawn. Hopefully you have maybe a front lawn that the pets don't use, or you have a neighbor or a friend that has lawn that doesn't have pets that you can harvest from. Sustainability means different things for different plants, and in the case of hairy cat's ear, it's actually a non-native weed that is a little bit invasive and aggressive in some areas, so it's okay to harvest a lot of this plant, and people are usually poisoning it anyway. Like a lot of the conservation organizations put herbicides on hairy cat's ear in some areas because it can compete with native plants. So you're actually like doing the world a favor by harvesting hairy cat's ear. When I am working with hairy cat's ear in the kitchen, I do 2 things to make it more palatable. One of those things is if I'm just gonna saute it without boiling it ahead of time, I'm gonna chop it really thinly. And what that does is it breaks up the surfaces of the leaves that would have lots of hair on it and be kind of a weird texture. And I find when you chop it up really thinly, it's just like a better eat in general. The second thing I would do if I wasn't gonna just saute it like that is I would boil the leaves in water and discard the water and then cook the leaves after that. This is called parboiling, and we do it a lot with wild greens. It can reduce the bitterness in the leaves a little bit, and it can also reduce the fibrousness. How long we are going to boil it in the water depends on how fibrous the leaves are and how bitter they are. So if you've harvested the really tender leaves in the spring, you probably only need to boil it for a few minutes. However, if you've harvested really fibrous leaves, we might want to boil it for up to 20 minutes. It really depends on what you've harvested. And we can basically just test it throughout the time that we're boiling it and see if it's the level of softness that you're looking for. My favorite dish to make with hairy cat's ear is something that I learned how to make in Italy called ripassata. And ripassata is basically wild greens boiled and then sauteed with garlic, olive oil, and then lemon juice and salt added after that. And this is an amazing way to make any wild green taste amazing. And you can combine lots of different wild greens in this dish. I sometimes just do hairy cat's ear because I have so much of it in my lawn, to be honest. But you could add things like dwarf mallow leaves or miner's lettuce or dandelion leaves. Lots of possibilities, even nettle. Pro tip for when you're making ripassata, I definitely like to wring out the water from the leaves before I saute it so that it's not super watery. I'm actually really curious to hear if y'all have eaten hairy cat's ear, and if so, did you like it? How do you like to prepare it? And your homework after this video is basically to go outside in your lawn and see if you have this plant. My guess is probably if you have a lawn that you do. I'm Natalie and I make videos about plants, herbal medicine, wild edibles, and foraging. Subscribe if you want to keep on learning.